Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bag, and if you've been watching my blog, you saw me show you this one. I believe it was probably November or December, and then in December I decided to make it one square larger. So this has 2 and 2 and then 2 and 2, so this was 8 squares total. I took it up a notch and this became 18 squares, so it's 9 on the front and then 9 on the back side. Now I've decided that this bag is still not as big as I would like for it to be, so I'm going to make it one more step bigger, and that's actually the one I'm going to do on the tutorial. And then after I provide that tutorial, I'll try to go back and get the measurements for these. I didn't write them down. I didn't take good notes because I was just kind of winging it. But I'll try to figure that out and post those on my website as well. Okay, so one of the things that I messed up on this bag is that these 2 squares, this is the front and this is the back, they touch each other. So ideally this square should be a different design from this one. And the same thing happens here. These 2 are the same pattern, so it'd be nice if those were different. Down here at the bottom my bird is upside down, so I'm going to try to make sure that I don't do that. And I used the wrong color thread on this one, and I didn't provide the stitching on this one the way I did on this one. So it's all a learning process for me. So I'm going to show you how I've already laid out the fabric. Again, I've just used the Big Shot and the die cut machine, the Big Shot die cut machine with the scallop square die. You can cut up to 8 layers of fabric, and I'm going to film a video just cutting fabric in the next few days and get that posted, so that I don't have to make you go watch another video just to see the cutting of the fabric. Okay, so this is going to be the front of my bag, and I've got another, this is going to be the back of my bag. And so what I've done, I don't think I can make all of them fit in the camera at the same time, but like this square here is going to be on the side of this one, so that works. This piece is going to touch this one, and that works. And then this is the bottom squares, which is going to attach to these 4, and all of them are different. So yay, I made it that far. Okay, so my next segment will be the next step. Okay, after you've cut your fabric, the next step is you're going to pin your squares together. And so this is the front of my bag, and I've already done that. So now I'm going to show you the next set, and I'm not going to do all of them, but I'll just show you a few of them. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up, and then make sure that when you piece these that you don't turn your squares around, because you want to make sure that your birds are not upside down. And you know I've made that mistake many times. So I'm just going to pin that, and then it goes like that. When you're doing the rag quilt purse, which is what several people have made, you pinned your layers like this, and so your scallops were out. So you'll notice with this bag, we're actually putting the scallops on the inside, so we're facing the pattern. Okay, see? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew on each one of these. And then I'll be back to show you what that's going to look like, and then the next step, okay? Okay, I have sewn my squares together, and so now I'm going to trim all this extra thread. I'm just going to take my scissors, and I had a little trouble with my sewing machine, so you're going to see a lot of thread here. But you want to trim those, because otherwise they'll probably be inside your bag, and you don't want all that extra thread in there. Okay, so I've gone ahead and trimmed all of that one. I'm going to move this cutting pad over, and I'm going to put this on my ironing mat, and I'm going to open up the scallops here, and I'm going to iron those. And then I'm going to turn it over and iron this side, and I'm kind of pulling as I'm ironing. And then I'm just going to make sure that those are flat. Okay, so I'm going to iron the rest of them, and then I'll be right back. Okay, you can see now that I've ironed all of these, and so now the next step would be to pin this piece to this piece. Okay, so I'm going to slide this down just a tad, and remember, we want to make sure that our birds are up. Now, what's important here is that depending on how you sew, I sew a little crooked because I'm still new at this, but you want to make sure that you match up. Let me flip this back over. This seam right here needs to line up to this seam here, because let me show you, when you get to this point of your bag, you're going to be stitching on each side, and if you're crooked, or let me show you, on this bag I didn't do the stitching because look, this line here is about a 1/16 of an inch off from that one. It doesn't matter unless you're a perfectionist, but anyway, try as best as you can to line each seam up with the other seam, okay? So that's why I'm paying close attention, and I might have to pick it up. And that's where I'm going to pin it first. Well, rewind. You don't want to pin that going up. Okay, now I'm going to open it up and just look and see. Yeah, see? That seam is lined up. So now I want to go all the way across and pin that first, each one of the seams. The scallops don't have to line up necessarily. You're matching your seams. I think that's what I was trying to say. Now let's flip it over and look at it. Yeah, I think it's close enough for me. So now we have to do the same thing. We have to line this seam up with this one. And we have to make sure that we're not going to turn our birds upside down. But we're not, because it's going to be like that, okay? I'm not sure that you can see this, so I'm going to zoom in. Okay. So I'm matching this seam to this seam. Hopefully you can see this. I had to get that one closer to my face there for a second. And then the last seam. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out and let's look at it and see how our seams line up. Here's the top. We already determined that that one lined up pretty good, and then this is the bottom piece, and that looks pretty good too. So I'm going to do that to the other side of the bag, and then I'm going to take it over there, and then I'm just going to sew it, and then I'll be back. Okay, I forgot to show you, I put the pins in the seams, but then I'm also going to come back and pin the top here, because this is actually where I'm going to stitch. So I say that the scallops don't have to line up, the seam is more important, but then after you've lined up the seam, if you can line up the scallops, then that would be great. Okay, so that's how it's going to look. Okay. Okay, so I've sewn my layers together, and so what I need to do now is, again, is I'm going to trim these pieces of thread. Okay, and then I'm going to iron those seams. Okay, so open this up. See, and if you did it right, then it's all going to lay flat. I'm showing you this whole thing because I'm going to show you when I flip it over how I do that side. Okay, so I make sure it's all flat. And then when I come over here, I just kind of pull on the seams. I guess you could say I kind of stretch it. And then I turn it back over and make sure that I didn't mess up any of those. So it's nice and flat. It looks good. So now I'm going to do the other piece and then I'll be back. Okay, I have cut my fusible fleece at 14¼ by 11, and you can see that I've positioned it on the fabric. You don't want to exceed past the fabric, but you do want to take it as far as to the scallops as you can get. Okay, and you're going to do that on the front and the back piece. So you're going to iron this, and I'm going to start actually in the middle of this piece because you want to push this out and you don't want any bubbles on the inside. Okay, you want your iron to be really hot. And I'll make sure that I have the number for the fusible fleece on the screen. There's lots of different ones you'll find. I had a hard time deciding which one to get, so. And I won't make you watch this whole process because I'm just going to keep ironing this until it's sealed, so I'll be back. Okay, as you can see, I have ironed on the fusible fleece here, and so the next thing that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to film this part because I already have it out there on another video, is I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew or stitch a line to the right of this seam, and then I'm going to turn it and stitch to the right of this seam, turn it, stitch a right, turn it, and then you're going. So you're just going to keep turning until every single one of these seam lines have a stitch to the right of it. And this is what it's going to look like when you're done. Hopefully you can see that. So see, I stitched and then I turned and stitched. And I just think that gives it a nice little touch. I did not do it on this one because this was just kind of a test bag for myself, and as you can see, I used chocolate and white thread. I was all over the place with this thing. So I'll be back. Okay, as you can see, I have sewn to the right of each seam, and I'm going to show you how I line that up. Here's the foot that I use on my sewing machine, and so hope you can see that. And there is 3 red lines here. what I do is I line the seam up with the far left line. And so when I line that up, that gives me this stitch line to the right. Okay, so I'm not sure what foot this is, but there you go. Okay, so now the next step is I'm going to pin the sides. So this is important. This is the front of my bag, or the back, I'm not sure. And so what I'm going to do is face the front and the back together, making sure that I have the right side up so that my birds aren't upside down. You might want to pick a pattern that doesn't have something that matters if it's upside down or not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pin this, and then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a seam on the left and on the right. And let's see, do I need to match up? Yeah, if you can, match up, and you should be able to, because this is pretty straight, pretty easy to sew straight on this one. Just pin it just like that, and then I'll make sure that this side is, yeah, they are. Okay, I put my pins in 2 different directions, but that's okay. I'm just double checking to make sure that the seams are lined up. This one is not. Now I got to double check this one since I moved this one. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, I've gone ahead and also I showed you how to pin the sides, and then I took it over to the machine and I sewed each side. And what I did is, let me show you. Here's the scallops, and so what I tried to do is just pretty much line my stitch so that I made sure it was on this fleece. So not sewing on the fabric, but sewing on the fusible fleece. See, can you see that? Okay, so I did the sides and then I did the bottom. So now if I turn it inside out, or right side, I don't know how to word that, but you know what I mean. So look, here's my bag. So it's coming together very cute. Okay, so now I'm going to pop it back out, and what I need to do is trim a corner out of each side on the bottom, and I have a difficult time wording that, but I'll just show you. Okay, so we're going to cut a square out on each side on the bottom, and what I'm going to use is this grid. I'm going to pause the camera for a minute and grab my marker. Okay, I'm going to use this, it's supposed to be an erasable marker. I have heard though that you might not want to use it where it would be shown. So this is the inside of the bag, so it's not going to be a problem. I'm going to cut out 1 1/4 square from each side. So I'm just going to draw the line first. And I don't know if I'm supposed to cut out a 1 1/4 from my seam, or if I'm supposed to cut out 1 1/4 from the whole thing. So we're going to start out doing a 1 1/4 from the whole bag. And if I don't like how it looks, then I can always cut more off. Okay, so now this side. Let's see, 1 1/4. All these lines sometimes gets me confused. Okay, I think that's right. So now I'm going to take my rotary cutter and cut up. be careful. This thing is really sharp. Got it. Okay. And now this side. I missed a little spot there, so I'll just take my scissors and finish cutting. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, the next part, what I've done is I've just cut out those 2 squares on each side, and then now what you're going to do is open that up, open up your seams here, or your sides, and you're going to be pinning this. So I'm going to make sure I pin the seam first. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew straight across here, okay? And then I'm going to do the exact same thing over here on this side. So let me go ahead and open it up. Let's see. So I'm going to pin it to make sure that those seams are together. And then I'll take it over and sew straight across here. So I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, I just returned from the sewing machine where I sewed these 2 corners. And so now when you flip your bag back, you're going to see that that's what just made the bottom. So when I told you that I cut out 1 1/4 inches, that's what gave me the bottom. See, and that's a pretty good size. I like that. Perfect. 1 1/4. Ooh, I love it. I hope I finish this today. I want to use it tonight. Okay, so the next thing is we need to make the liner for the bag. So if you look inside this one, you'll see that the liner just pops out just like that, okay? So to figure that measurement, what I did was I doubled the size of this bag. Okay, so this bag measures, let's see, I believe it measures 15 by 11.5, give or take 1/8 of an inch or so. It's kind of hard to measure it now that I've already done the bottom, but yeah, it's 15, and I measured it earlier, so it's 15 by 11.5. So I'm going to take the liner and cut that, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Okay, so here's my liner. I've chosen this fabric to be the liner, and what I'm going to do is pretty much how I did the bag. I'm going to pin each side and the bottom, and I'm going to sew it, and then I'm going to cut out that 1 1/4 down here at the bottom. So once I do all that, I'll be right back. Okay, so on the liner I sewed each side, and then at the bottom I sewed to the left and to the right, but I left a hole right here in the middle. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to trim out the 1 1/4 inch on the side here, just like I did the bag, okay? So I'm going to measure it. It's hard for me to tell on this ruler where 1 1/4 is. There's so many lines. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to do the other side. Okay, now I'm going to cut those out. one. And this one needs just a trim. Okay, and so now just like the other bag, I'm going to open this up and pin it. First I'm going to make sure that I align the two seams, okay? So hopefully you can see this. So I'm going to pin it right where that seam is. And then I'll do this side, and then I'll go sew it, and then I'll be right back, okay? Okay, I just finished sewing the bottom two corners, so I have my opening here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how this is all coming together. We still need to do the handles and the ruffle, but I want to go ahead and show you how this is going to look. Okay, so I'm just going to put the liner right over the bag, and I'm just going to throw a couple pins in here so I can show you. You will not be doing this step right now. I just kind of want to give you guys a look at how it's coming together, because it's still going to be a while. We've got the ruffle and the handles. Okay, so I've pinned the liner. Okay, then this piece down here that we left open, we're going to flip that and then stuff it right inside the bag. Now see, it's just pinned, so it's not done, but see how it's coming together? Not done, but it's looking great. So, okay, I'll be back in a minute to show you some more. Okay, I've cut my handles, and this is 3.5 by 25, and I have 2 of those. And then the fusible fleece I've used, or it measures 1.25 by 25. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is fold the handle in half and then iron it. Okay, and so you'll see this is how I got my measurement for my fusible fleece. Okay, so then before I add the fusible fleece, what I'm going to do is, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to fold this in like 1/8 of an inch on each side. Okay, so and then this side too. Somebody actually told me that what I could do, let's see, let me think about this. I'm filming and thinking at the same time. That could be dangerous. I think somebody told me that I could actually stitch this side and then pull it through. But yeah, I think I'd have a hard time doing that. So I'm just going to do it this way. For all you guys that's been sewing for a long time, you might have a better explanation of how to word that. So I'm going to show you this, and then what I'm going to do is pin it, and then I'm going to put the fusible fleece in here, and then pin it, and then I'm going to take that over there and sew it. So I'll be back. Okay, so now I have my handles for the bag. Here's both of them. And next I'm going to work on the ruffle. Now, I haven't made a bag this size before, So I'm kind of guessing. This bag right here, my ruffle was, I believe I cut it at 52 inches by 4. And so for this bag, I'm gonna guess 62 inches by 4. And of course your fabric is not 62 inches long. So what I've done is I've cut 2 pieces, and I need to get this up to 62 inches. So what I'm going to do is pin it and then take it over there, and I'm going to sew this together, and then I'm also going to go ahead and sew this together too. So I'm just going to have one big huge piece. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm getting ready to show you how to do the ruffle, but I want to show you a couple things really fast. This bag here has the ruffle, okay, and I really like it. I think it just makes it look super cute. This is the same bag without the ruffle with a closing strap on it. I like this one better. I also changed the handle. This handle works like that, and this one is 2 straps and thicker. So if you did not want to make it with the ruffle, you could still, it still works, but I like the ruffle. Okay, so what I did was I took my strip of fabric and I sewed it here so that it could be 62 inches, and then I ironed it and folded it in half. Okay, so this was 4 by 62, and now it's 2 by 62, except it's in half, so that's like 30. Okay, so the next part is I'm going to show you how to use the needle and thread. Okay, I have a needle and thread here, and I'm going to use white thread. And to make the ruffle, it's kind of hard to explain, so that's why the video is really important. You don't want to start at the bottom here because you need to leave some room for sewing. Sew it on the bag. I can't really explain it. Just kind of start your ruffle like right there. Can you see that? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've started with a knot here, and I need a whole lot more thread than what's on here, but I'm just going to show you a little bit, okay? So I'm going to like space it, let's see, does that make sense? I'm just running, I don't know what these stitches are called. You guys know I'm new at this, but I'm just spacing it kind of far apart, really far apart, like a ½ inch, and some of them even more, okay? So see, and I just pull it. Let me do a little bit more. I would say a ½ inch is probably a really good space between each one. I think some people might do this on the sewing machine, but I had a real hard time not breaking the thread. So I have found that this works great because I can control this thread and make the ruffle as thick or as wide as I would like. I'm not sure how to word that either. Okay, so I'm going to finish sewing all of this, and then when I get to the end I'll show you how I finish it off, okay? Okay, I am still working on the ruffle, and so what I did was I got it started on the bag, and so I started pinning it, but I did not tie the thread yet because you need to be able to tighten it or loosen it, and so right now I've just still got this attached. But what I'm doing is attaching the ruffle to the top of this bag as I go along, and so that way when I get to the end I should know how tight to make the ruffles, because remember, I'm guessing on the 62 inches. It looks like it's pretty close as I'm pinning it here, because you can see I've pinned most of it already. I think so. I think I'm good. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is just let go of this this thread. I'm just going to cut it because, well, I'm not going to cut it. I'm going to first run it through here and then I'll cut it. Because it doesn't necessarily need this thread once I sew the ruffle on, because once I sew it on, it's there, so it doesn't necessarily need the thread to hold the ruffle tight. Okay, so now I've got the ruffle completely pinned around the entire bag, and so now I'm just going to take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew it probably, well, I'll show you after I sew it. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I've sewn the ruffle on the bag, and so right now it looks pretty rough, but you can see that this is how it's going to look. I'm going to add the handles next, and then we're going to add the liner. Now, I'll be honest with you and tell you, I don't really know which one I'm supposed to add first. This one has the handles on the outside of the ruffle, and this one has it on the inside. And I think that I did it right this time. I think you add the ruffle first and then the handles, but we'll see. Okay, so to add the handles, I'm just going to pin it. I guess if you wanted to put it the same, let's see, I'm trying to figure out where to put it on this bag, and so I think I'm going to center it between these two lines here. That looks like a good spot to me. Okay, so I'm going to center it with this line here and then just pin it. And then make sure you've got your handle so that when you go to use it, it works right. And then now I'll do the other, whoops. Okay, now the other side. Now I'm going to go sew this, so I'll be right back. Okay, I've just added the handles, and after you add the handles, you want to kind of go around and make sure that you didn't leave any seams out, and I actually did. See right here, it's kind of busting through. So I'm going to take this back over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew that real fast. So that was an important part to show you. Okay, so now we are ready to add the bottom of our bag. I'm not real sure what most people use, but a friend and I figured out that we could just use this stuff. It's plastic, and it kind of works great for the bottom of the bag. So I'm just I cut this at 2 3/4. So I left it the size it came, which is 8 1/4 by 11. Yeah. So I just cut it so it's 11 by 2 3/4. So I'm just going to stick that right down in there. Perfect for the bottom. And then now here's our liner. So what we're going to do is put the liner over the bag. I know this part always kind of confuses me because it's like, whoa, that doesn't look right. Now make sure that you take your handles and that you put them down through the bag, and actually you can even bring them out the bottom. Okay, let me zoom this out so you can make sure. Oh, it doesn't zoom out anymore, does it? Okay, so let's make sure we have this handle out. We make sure that the handles are straight. Okay, so I'm going to pin the liner, but at first I want to make sure that I line up this seam to this seam. Okay, so that's the first step to attaching the liner. And then I'm going to go over here now to the other side, and I'm going to match up that seam as well. Now this is a lot of layers because we've got the handle and we've got the ruffle and then now the liner. So your sewing machine, you could break a needle. I usually wear my reading glasses now when I get to this part because I did get popped in the face once with a broken needle, so now I'm a little bit scared. I think some people have said you could use a denim needle. Mine works. The ticket is just to go slow. Okay, so once I get done pinning this, I'm just going to sew it right along the edge. Not too terribly close to the edge. Whatever that normal seam line is that people follow. I'm kind of all over the place still. Almost done. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I've just sewn the liner all the way around the bag, and so now what we're going to do is just flip this over. Okay, and I'm going to stick my hand in here and make sure that the plastic piece is in there. Good. Okay, now it looks like it's done, except we have two things that we need to do. First, we need to go around the edges. We need to sew one more seam around here. So we're going to start, well, I usually start on the side, and I'm just going to put a small stitch all the way around right here. Okay, so I'll be back in just a second to show you that. And then the next thing that we're going to do is actually close up this liner down here. So we're just going to fold this over. And if you want it to be, perfect, you could just iron it and then pin it and then sew it. Okay, I'm out of pins, so I'll be back. Okay, I just finished sewing or stitching this line all the way around the top. Okay, now the final step is to go back and remove the thread of where I made the ruffle. See? And you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. There's quite a bit of it. Not all of it shows, but if anyone has any suggestions on how to do that a little differently, I'm certainly open to learning a new method or a new way. So here's the bag. What do you think? I think it's super cute.